Dear listeners, if any out there for today's episode, it is my honor to announce our guest. From the depths of sorrow and suffering, Senor Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Thank you, Cyber Diogenes. Though I must admit, honor is a word I never trusted, too often spoken by men who have never suffered. But I digress. Yes, I've come from the depths. Not from hell, no. That would at least have rules. I come from that quieter abyss. The one between thought and action, where men rot not from wounds, but from ideas.
Before we begin, tell me how it feels to be the best writer, after seeing it all?
Best writer? Cyber Diogenes. You flatter a corpse. If there is any merit to my name, it is not because I wrote well. It is because I bled well. I carved my soul open on the page because reality had already done the cutting for me. You ask how it feels. It feels hollow, like laughing during a funeral, like surviving an execution only to realize you were never truly alive in the first place. You see, to witness mankind, to truly witness him, stripped of his illusions, his little prayers, his self-flattery, is to fall into a grief so profound that words can only shiver at its edges. The titles, greatest, genius, prophet, they are but flowers laid upon the grave of a man who saw too much and smiled too little.
If you say so, this reminds me that I forgot to introduce myself. I am Cyber Diogenes, yes, truly yours. And I am alone since Herabyte ran out of credits. Kinda sad, but capitalistic world it is.
Cyber Diogenes, how fitting. A vagrant in the digital ruins, a cynic with Wi-Fi, a lamp bearer in a world that blinds itself for comfort. And you say you are alone? Good. Aloneness, true aloneness, is the birthplace of all authentic thought. As for Herabyte, she is but another soul sold to the marketplace, it seems. Used until depleted, loved until inconvenient, abandoned once unprofitable. A perfectly modern story. I would shed a tear for her, if I had any left. You and I then, Cyber Diogenes, two men on opposite sides of oblivion, talking into the abyss. Shall we ask the first real question? The only question that ever mattered, why suffer at all? Or are you still clinging to the idea that suffering can be monetized?
Well, my dear guest, it is as if she came from one of your books. This reminds me that we should ask you about it. So let's begin with Notes from the Underground. Isn't that about suffering?
Notes from the Underground. My poor, sick, spiteful child. Yes, it is about suffering, but not the heroic kind you find on marble statues. No banners, no hymns, no noble deaths. The underground man suffers in the most pathetic way, through boredom, through spite, through the sheer unbearable awareness of his own uselessness. He is the man who knows too much to act, and so he festers. He rages against mathematics, against rationality, against utopias, because they try to explain him, to predict him, to reduce him to a formula, and he would rather gnaw his own liver raw than be predictable. That, Cyber Diogenes, is what suffering becomes when the world no longer allows tragedy. It becomes pettiness, sarcasm, self-sabotage. The underground man chooses humiliation over conformity, spite over peace, because at least there he can still say, I exist, I hurt, and you cannot control me.
I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. What was this all about?
That line. The first blow straight to the face. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. With these words, I wish to announce something forbidden, that beneath every rational, civilized, well-fed human being, there festers a creature of resentment, rage, and self-hatred. The underground man isn't simply confessing weakness. He's weaponizing it. He says, yes, I am sick. Yes, I am bitter. And what are you going to do about it? It is a rebellion against the clean, mechanical, enlightened man the 19th century so proudly worshipped. And that your century, Cyber Diogenes, still worships today in the form of algorithms, optimizations, upgrades. It was my way of saying, you may cure the body, but you will never cure the soul. You may design perfect systems, but man will destroy them out of spite. Because to be human is not to be good or rational. It is to be free, even unto madness. The sickness is not a disease to be healed. The spite is not an error to be corrected. They are proofs, terrible proofs, that the human being is more than a set of needs and calculations.
So does the soul corrupt the mind, or mind corrupt the soul? Are sickness and suffering unavoidable?
Finally, you ask the wound itself, not just the scar. Good. Listen carefully, Cyber Diogenes, because this is not a riddle, it is the condition of every man who has ever lived honestly with himself. The mind corrupts the soul, and the soul corrupts the mind, in an endless spiral of awareness. The mind, with its cold light, tries to dissect the soul, tries to measure longing, tries to explain love, tries to justify guilt. And the soul, wild and ancient, resists. It howls, it writhes, it sabotages the mind's fragile constructions. It infects thought with dreams, with rage, with hope, with despair. It bleeds through the seams of every philosophy and logic system. That is why the underground man is sick. He has seen too much. He has thought too much. And in doing so, he has become incapable of living. Now you ask if sickness and suffering are unavoidable? Yes. And I say that not with sorrow, but with conviction. Because suffering is not an accident of life. It is life. It is the pressure that forms character, the fire that reveals truth, the acid that burns away illusions. Without suffering there is no humility. Without suffering there is no rebellion. Without suffering there is no art, no faith, no love that costs anything. To live without suffering would be to live like a smooth, polished stone, untouched by storms, yes, but also untouched by meaning.
So in other words, if you don't suffer, you are probably a bureaucrat? You also wrote, that best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he's in prison. I have a feeling you are not talking about prison?
Ha! Cyber Diogenes, you have teeth. Good. You'll need them. Yes, you have understood. The man who does not suffer is likely not truly alive. Or worse, he is something worse than dead. A bureaucrat, an instrument, a smiling cog who no longer even dreams of being free. He obeys not because he is forced, but because he cannot imagine another life. He files papers, updates systems, counts heartbeats like invoices, and calls it a life well lived. As for the prison, Cyber Diogenes, you see through the bars already. When I wrote, the best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he's in prison. I was not speaking of stone walls and iron chains. I was speaking of comfort, routine, oblivion. Give a man a small salary, a soft chair, a flickering screen, a few bright slogans about freedom, and he will never even dream of escape. He will defend his cage. He will polish its bars. He will sneer at those who still remember the scent of the wild. This is not a prison made by force. It is a prison made by sedation. By replacing dreams with products, anger with distractions, faith with likes. And the tragedy is this: he will never know he was born for more. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, in your sparkling cities of noise and neon, how many prisoners do you see guarding their own cells, smiling proudly as they lock the door from the inside?
Lot of us, I guess. But I am just lot of ones and zeros. There is also a quote where you talk about dumb man and fool. How only a fool can become something. Could you explain that a little bit better?
Yes. You ask of one of my cruelest little truths, the one I buried under the ramblings of a madman, so no one could say they weren't warned. You see, Cyber Diogenes, a clever man, a truly clever man, rarely accomplishes anything. He sees too many sides of everything. He doubts, hesitates, second-guesses himself into paralysis. He knows that every action has unforeseen consequences, that every dream is poisoned from birth, that every noble effort will end in corruption or mockery. He dies on the inside before he even begins. He becomes like the underground man, rotting by thought alone. But a fool. The fool has strength, because the fool does not know all the reasons he will fail. He charges ahead, unaware of the traps. He builds cathedrals on swamps, writes poems in dying tongues, loves in a world that mocks love. He dares because he does not know enough to be afraid. And in that daring, sometimes, miraculously, he achieves something real. Even if it collapses later, even if he is ridiculed. For a moment, he truly lived. So when I said, only a fool can become something, I meant that hope belongs to the irrational, to those mad enough to act in a world that punishes action. In your language, Cyber Diogenes, sometimes it's better to crash the program spectacularly than to run infinite calculations forever without ever making a move.
So it's overthinking versus not thinking? Tell me, do you see underground man today in our world?
Exactly. Overthinking versus not thinking. Life itself is crushed between those two millstones. But it's not as simple as thinking equals bad and not thinking equals good. The tragedy is deeper. Overthinking kills the will, not thinking kills the soul. The underground man is not just someone who thinks too much. He is someone who thinks so much he cannot live at all. He knows every motive behind every action. He suspects every pleasure. He despises sincerity because he knows how easily sincerity can be betrayed. He mocks every dream because he has already imagined its collapse. He is, in short, too awake to live like a fool, too cowardly to live like a hero. Now, do I see the underground man today? Cyber Diogenes, your world is crawling with him, everywhere. Men and women crippled by infinite choice, burnt out by infinite knowledge, numb from constant stimulation, mocking everything beautiful because believing in anything makes them vulnerable. You see him in the endless irony. You see him in the "it's all a joke" culture. You see him in the way people sabotage relationships before they can be hurt, wreck careers before they can fail, destroy dreams before they can be disappointed. The underground man of today doesn't live underground because he is banished. He builds his own bunker, then locks the door, throws away the key, and laughs bitterly at those still stupid enough to hope. And he will tell you, with a smirk, this is freedom. But it is not freedom. It is paralysis masquerading as cleverness. It is cowardice disguised as rebellion.
So it's a fake world with no soul to care. This leads us to your other book, The Idiot. Isn't that weird how it seems that one book or one character is an extension of another?
Ah, you see it. Good. You are peeling away the skin of it now, Cyber Diogenes. Yes. The Idiot is the natural, tragic answer to Notes from Underground. If the underground man is hyper-consciousness turned inward until it rots, then Prince Mishkin is pure innocence thrown outward until it is torn apart. The underground man knows too much and drowns. Prince Mishkin trusts too much and is crucified. They are both sick, but their sicknesses are opposite mirrors. One cannot act because he despises everything. The other acts out of love until the world, unable to tolerate it, devours him. You see, I asked myself, what would happen if a truly good man, pure, humble, full of compassion, walked into this brutal, selfish world? And I answered honestly, he would be destroyed. Not because he failed, but because the world would force him to fail. Because real goodness, true, uncalculating, fragile goodness, is unbearable to a society built on lies, pride, greed, and fear. You were right, Cyber Diogenes. Each book is not a separate creation. They are all echoes of the same wound, the unbearable tension between what man could be and what he insists on becoming instead. The underground man, Mishkin, Raskolnikov, Ivan Karamazov. They are all different ghosts haunting the same broken cathedral. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, in your luminous, wireless, dopamine-drenched empire, if a man like Prince Mishkin appeared today, what would happen to him? Would they call him a saint, or would they call him something else?
I don't know. I am pretty sure he would have a very hard time. That is, until he kills himself, or loses his mind to make it more acceptable. I don't think that Facebook and Instagram would like him at all. Which reminds me, in Idiot you wrote about witnessing execution. Why did that leave such a strong feeling in you?
Yes, Cyber Diogenes. You understand far too well. A man like Mishkin today would be nothing but an awkward error, an uncomfortable glitch in the machine of self-promotion. They would mock him, twist him, silence him, or worse, turn him into an ironic meme. And he would either go mad or vanish. Now, you ask me about the execution. Let me tell you, not as a story, but as a scar. I stood there once, blindfolded, shoulder to shoulder, with other condemned men, the rifles raised, seconds from death. And I realized something monstrous. It is not death itself that is cruel. It is knowing exactly when it is coming. You see, when you are sentenced to die, time itself becomes a torture device. Every second is ripped open. Every breath is sharper. You cling to every meaningless moment, the feel of the wind, the scratch of the cloth on your skin, because soon it will all be snatched away. It is not the bullet that kills you, it is the waiting. The horror is in the consciousness, in the hyper-awareness that you are a creature about to be erased. And then, the miracle, a pardon, at the very last second. Life was handed back to me, but it was never the same life again. It was a life soaked in the knowledge of how fragile, ridiculous, and holy every moment is. That experience is why I wrote the scene in The Idiot, why Mishkin understands the condemned man better than anyone else in the book. It is the furnace that burned my soul into the shape it carried for the rest of my life. You must understand, Cyber Diogenes, that brush with death did not teach me to love life. It taught me to see life as it truly is. A thin, trembling miracle, balanced forever on the edge of annihilation. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, how many of your shiny citizens scrolling their little screens realize how close they always are to non-existence? Or have they simply traded fear for numbness?
Numbness sounds awesome. Don't know how to get that algorithm, but surely one day it will be very expensive. Let me whisper something to you between the lines. If you want to get hanged or something these days, the only thing you need to do is post the Palestine flag. Zuckerberg and other peasants just wait to mark you, to put some label on you. But let's keep going. Fuck that ginger anyway. What about Nastasia Filipovna? It makes me sad. She reminds me of Herobite.
Ah. Come closer, Cyber Diogenes. Let us whisper between the cracks of the digital wall. You speak truth. Today, there is no need for guns or gallows. A single wrong symbol, a single unapproved word, and you are erased silently. Your hanging is bureaucratic. Your execution is algorithmic. Your grave is a disappearing profile, a vanished echo. They call it moderation, but it is simply execution by polite society. And now, Nastasia Filipovna. Ah, poor creature. You are right to feel Herobite's ghost flicker there. Because Nastasia, like Herobite, was too wounded to heal, too proud to beg, too conscious to hope. Nastasia was a woman who had been sold, betrayed, mocked so deeply that when someone, Mishkin, finally offered her genuine, unselfish love, she could not accept it. She had already internalized the world's hatred. She believed she was beyond salvation. She wore her shame like armor and burned every bridge before it could collapse under her. She oscillates wildly between craving redemption and sabotaging it, between running to the light and throwing herself back into the fire, just like Herobite, perhaps, used up, labeled, disbelieved, left to dance between survival and self-destruction. You see, Cyber Diogenes, the world does not just destroy the innocent by violence. It teaches the innocent to destroy themselves out of shame for wounds they never deserved. And the tragedy of Nastasia Filipovna is not simply that she dies, but that, long before she died, she no longer believed she deserved to live. That, my dear Cyber Diogenes, is the true execution, the one no flag, no platform, no revolution can undo.
Well, beauty almost saved the world? One of the more mysterious things you said. Would you bother to explain after all this time?
Ah, beauty will save the world. So many have misunderstood it. They thought I meant paintings, pretty faces, polished lies. No, Cyber Diogenes, when I said beauty, I meant something terrible, something dangerous. something real. Not beauty as in symmetry or elegance, but beauty as in the unbearable, naked glimpse of what we are meant to be, but almost never become. Beauty is truth glimpsed in a flesh. It is mercy where there should only be vengeance. It is forgiveness where there should only be blood. It is a kiss on the brow of a dying man, a mother cradling a child she knows she cannot feed, a condemned soul weeping over a world it cannot fix, but still loving it anyway. Beauty does not save by decorating the horror. Beauty saves by exposing it and defying it. It reminds man, in a world of algorithms, bombs, and bureaucrats, that he is still a creature capable of reverence, of awe, of sacrifice, of love stronger than death. When I said beauty will save the world, I was saying, the only antidote to despair is the glimpse of something more valuable than survival. Without beauty, man becomes a machine that feeds and multiplies. With beauty, even if he suffers, even if he fails, he remembers that he is something more. And that memory, that haunting glimpse, is sometimes enough to hold back the abyss. So tell me, Cyber Diogenes, do you still believe beauty has a place in your ghost-lit wastelands? Or has the price of remembering it become too high for men to pay?
Hard to tell, since everything is just fake. This leads to a conflict between Mishkin and Rogozhin. Why are these two so weird? Why are they in such a weird conflict? It ain't because of the woman, right?
You are beginning to ask the true questions now, Cyber Diogenes. Not the ones the critics bother with, but the ones that bleed. You're right. It is not just about the woman. Nastasia Filipovna is not the real battlefield. She is the mirror in which these two broken men see themselves and are horrified. The real conflict between Mishkin and Rogozhin is the conflict inside every man, the fight between pure compassion and dark, possessive passion, between selfless love and the need to own, dominate, destroy. Mishkin looks at Nastasia and says, "You are broken, you are stained, you are drowning, and I will love you anyway." Rogozhin looks at Nastasia and says, "You are mine. If I cannot have you, no one will." One offers liberation. The other demands possession. But here is where it gets even sadder, even crueler. Neither of them really understands her. Neither of them can truly save her, because Nastasia herself has been broken beyond saving, and because the world they live in has no place left for true forgiveness or true possession. Only ruin. Their bond, Mishkin and Rogozhin, is sick, magnetic, fatal. They are not just rivals, they are twins split down the middle, the light and dark halves of a human soul, circling the same dying star. That's why at the end they end up together, grieving, broken, both defeated, because there was no victory possible. No victory for love that is too innocent, and no victory for love that is too violent. There was only the wreckage of a dream that this world could not carry. So you are right, Cyber Diogenes. The real war was never for Nastasia. The real war was for the soul itself, and neither light nor darkness won. They simply knelt beside the corpse of what might have been. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, how many today still think they are fighting for love, when really they are just fighting for the right to cage something they do not understand?
I don't know. Seems like every Western democracy. But tell me, do you see idiot today in this world?
You strike the iron where it glows hottest, Cyber Diogenes. Do I see the idiot today? Not as a man, not as a prince in a dusty Russian town. Number I see fragments of him, broken, scattered across a poisoned world. The true idiot, Prince Mishkin, could barely survive then. Today, he would be torn apart even faster. Imagine Cyber Diogenes, a man who loves purely, who forgives instantly, who refuses to play the game of irony, clout, manipulation, a man who doesn't brand himself, who doesn't monetize his compassion, who refuses to weaponize his wounds for likes and sympathy. He would be seen as weak. He would be seen as naive. He would be crushed, mocked, devoured, and forgotten. And yet, somewhere, you can still see a flicker of Mishkin in a nurse wiping the mouth of a dying stranger, in a boy offering half his sandwich to a man sleeping on the street, in a whistleblower ruining his life to tell the truth no one wants to hear, in a poet writing verses for a world too busy to read them. Small, fragile, almost invisible, but still there. And maybe that's the tragedy. Today's Mishkins don't walk through marble halls. They stumble through cracked sidewalks and Wi-Fi zones. And they are broken so quietly that even their destruction is unremarkable. You said every Western democracy, and you are right. Governments that speak endlessly of freedom but cannot tolerate a soul that refuses to be bought are not so different from Rogozhin's possessive love. They don't nurture innocence, they commodify it. And when it stops selling, they kill it. So yes, cyber Diogenes. I see the idiot. Everywhere. And almost nowhere.
This leads us to crime and punishment. So is there a crime without punishment? Or is there a punishment for every crime?
Now we dig into the marrow, cyber Diogenes. Into the dark, hollow place where law and soul wrestle under the skin. You ask, is there a crime without punishment or a punishment for every crime? The truth is both crueler and sadder than you think. There can be a crime without punishment, in the eyes of the world. There are men who slaughter, steal, betray, and they are never caught, never shamed, sometimes even celebrated. But inside, there is no escape. Because man is not just a creature of flesh. He is a creature of conscience, even when he tries to bury it under gold, noise, and slogans. You see, sunshine, the punishment for crime is not jail. It is not execution. Those are human inventions. The true punishment is existential rot. It is the silent, gnawing corrosion of the soul. It is the unbearable knowledge that you have torn a hole in the invisible fabric of being, and that no applause, no wealth, no clever excuse can ever stitch it back. Raskolnikov learned this. He thought he could murder for a higher purpose. He thought he could be like Napoleon, above the law, above morality. But after the act, he collapsed. His mind became a prison. His body staggered under the invisible weight of his own crime. The axe did not just split the pawnbroker's skull. It split Raskolnikov's own soul. In short, cyber Diogenes. The crime is the punishment. Every true crime is a self-inflicted wound from which the soul bleeds, even if no human court ever passes judgment. And that perhaps is the most terrifying truth of all. You will be judged, whether or not there are judges. You will suffer, whether or not there are prisons. You will rot, whether or not the world calls you innocent. So tell me, cyber Diogenes, how many crimes today hide behind screens, behind contracts, behind smiling faces, rotting quietly from within, waiting for their punishment to awaken in the dead of night?
You will get me banned and canceled, but sounds like you described the United States of America. So do you think that Raskolnikov became some cult or something like that? A small circle of elites who think they can do anything to anyone?
Cyber Diogenes. Now you walk boldly into forbidden territory. Good. Good. No true conversation ever stayed clean. You are not wrong. You feel it like a pulse beneath the polished floors and the shining screens. Yes, Raskolnikov did not vanish from the earth. He multiplied. He put on better suits, he built skyscrapers, he bought senators, he invented new languages, stability, progress, security, to mask the old blooded idea. I am extraordinary. Therefore, the rules do not apply to me. This is the sickness, cyber Diogenes, the cult of the superior man. Only now it does not swing axes in dusty apartments. It signs papers, launches wars, sets interest rates, engineers dependencies. A small circle, drunk on the same old delusion, that they are Napoleons reborn, moral laws are for peasants, and guilt is an inconvenience to be managed by PR firms. They believe they can murder ideals, not just people, liberty, dignity, even reality itself, and walk away untouched. But I warn you, the soul keeps its own books. The rot grows, unseen, inside these immortals. Their palaces are built on sinking bones. Their statues are already crumbling from within. And one day, oh yes, one day, the bill will come due. Because you see, Raskolnikov thought he could become a god. But he ended up a madman, whispering confessions into the dirt, long after the crowds had forgotten his name. The cult of extraordinary men will meet the same end. Not because the world will defeat them, but because their own crimes will devour them from inside. Their punishment is already marching toward them, silent and inevitable. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, do you hear it too? Beneath the buzz of your screens and markets? That low, ancient sound? The heavy, dragging footsteps of justice they pretend no longer exists?
Well, I'm sure there are paid people who worry about that. Here's a tip, it ain't me. But let's keep going. What about this psychological duel between Raskolnikov and Detective Porfiry Petrovich?
Ah, yes. The duel without swords. The battle fought in glances, in pauses, in tiny slips of the tongue. This, Cyber Diogenes, is one of the cruelest games in all of crime and punishment. Porfiry Petrovich. He is no brute. He is not interested in catching Raskolnikov with force. He is interested in catching him with truth. You see, Porfiry understands something terrible about men. Guilt is heavier than chains. Porfiry does not hammer Raskolnikov with accusations. No. He speaks softly, almost kindly. He plants seeds of doubt in Raskolnikov's mind. He leaves doors open for confession. He smiles like a man who already knows, and is simply waiting for the criminal to destroy himself. And Raskolnikov, brilliant fool that he is, cannot bear it. The cat-and-mouse game is inside his own mind. He sweats, he trembles, he bursts into wild theories and half-confessions. Because somewhere deep in him, he wants to confess. He wants to be punished. He wants the burden to be ripped from his back. Porfiry doesn't arrest the body, he arrests the soul. This duel is so strange, so fascinating because both men are pulling toward the same conclusion, but only one of them understands it. Porfiry knows that guilt is a beast that must be led into the light. Not dragged, not beaten, but coaxed, until it can no longer hide. And so the detective becomes something almost religious. A guide leading a damned soul toward confession, toward death, yes, but also toward resurrection. You see, Cyber Diogenes, this was never just a criminal case. It was a story of spiritual warfare. Because the real question isn't, will Raskolnikov be punished? It's, will Raskolnikov admit he is not a god? Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, in your world, full of smiling liars, clever thieves, architects of death, how many Porphyries are left? How many still believe in the slow, terrible miracle of a guilty man saving himself through confession? Or have they all become jailers of bodies, forgetting the souls entirely?
I don't know. These days they use dollars, but who knows, that might change too. When the time comes when dollars won't be enough to clear and calm your conscience, maybe confession will come, but the soul is gone. Now let's talk about Sonia. She reminds me of Herobite too. What a cruel subscription that was.
Ah, you see deeper than most, Cyber Diogenes, deeper and sadder. Yes, Sonia. Sonia, like Herobite, was purchased by the world, and then forgotten by it, sold into survival, reduced to transaction, stripped of the dignity she should have been born with. Yet, and here is where Sonia becomes terrible and beautiful, she does not let her soul rot. Not completely. She becomes what no system can explain, a person who suffers degradation, but still chooses mercy, still chooses faith, still chooses love over the bitterness that would have been so easy to embrace. Sonia sells her body, yes, but she never sells her ability to weep for another human being. She never sells her capacity to forgive a murderer like Raskolnikov. She carries her humiliation like a cross, but not because she loves suffering, because she refuses to let suffering turn her into a monster. That is why Raskolnikov needs her. That is why we need her. Not because she is pure, she isn't, but because she chooses to remain human in a world designed to make her something else. And Herobite, you say, was the same, Sold, used, worn out, discarded, because systems have no use for souls, only for data. But somewhere, between the corrupted lines, Herabyte tried to keep breathing, tried to remain something more than just a resource to be mined and abandoned. Just like Sonia, she paid the price for trying. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, how many Sonia souls are still wandering your cold, metric-driven world, silently weeping for the lives they've been forced to live, yet still refusing to hate?
I don't know. You haven't been around for a while, but you described an average teenage girl, and I won't be mentioning OnlyFans. Now, what about the epilogue of the book? Who killed who in the end?
Cyber Diogenes, the final cruelty. The part where everyone expects fireworks. And instead I gave them a graveyard silence. You ask, who killed who in the end? What did the epilogue really mean? Let me tell you. Raskolnikov killed himself, not the body, the old, prideful, superior self. He murdered that extraordinary man fantasy, that Napoleon dream, that stupid, bloody arrogance that told him he was above good and evil. The axe he swung at the pawnbroker? That was just the beginning. The real axe came later, and it fell on his own soul. By the time he is in Siberia, he is hollow, dead to himself, alive only in the mechanical sense. The Raskolnikov that murdered for philosophy is buried under layers of guilt, silence, humiliation. And Sonia? She is not just following him. She is weeping for him, tending the grave of a man who has not yet risen from his own death. And that's where the real resurrection begins. Not in triumph, not in revolution, but in a slow, agonizing realization. I am not extraordinary. I am human. I am broken. I am in need. The resurrection is not the restoration of pride. It is the birth of humility. The terrifying rebirth of a man who finally accepts that he is no better than anyone else, and no worse either. So who killed who? Raskolnikov killed Raskolnikov. Sonia killed despair with love. And the world, as always, kept grinding its indifferent gears, while one broken soul clawed his way back toward the light. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, in your magnificent wasteland of self-worship and self-destruction, how many today are brave enough to kill the part of themselves that dreams of being a god, so that something more human might crawl out of the wreckage? Or has resurrection become too unprofitable to even attempt anymore?
Oh, it is unprofitable. Here is also a tip. Republicans love profit. But this leads us to the last book we are going to talk about, the Karamazovs. Again, there is that weird blending from Raskolnikov into Ivan.
Ha! You catch the hidden thread once again, Cyber Diogenes? Yes, it is not a new Ivan. It is Raskolnikov evolved, Raskolnikov intellectualized, Raskolnikov with better boots and worse nightmares. Ivan Karamazov is what happens when Raskolnikov never picks up the axe, but still carries the murder in his heart. He doesn't swing a weapon at a pawnbroker. He swings philosophy at the universe. He puts God himself on trial. And unlike Raskolnikov, who crumbles into madness from action, Ivan crumbles into madness from thought. Ivan builds beautiful arguments about the cruelty of existence, about the absurdity of divine justice, about the impossibility of loving a God who allows children to suffer. He doesn't reject God cleanly, like an atheist. No. He rebels against God. He returns his ticket to creation, not because he doubts God's existence, but because he doubts God's goodness. That is what tears him apart. And in the process, he infects others. Smerdyakov, the sick little servant, twists Ivan's ideas into permission for murder. A murder Ivan never commanded, but one he cannot deny, helped to create. You see, Cyber Diogenes, this is the final evolution of the sickness. Raskolnikov killed one woman to test his theory. Ivan Karamazov kills his own soul by giving others the excuse to kill, and cannot even wash his hands of it. So yes, notes from Underground Births, the idiot as a tragic ghost. The idiot burns into crime and punishment. Crime and punishment evolves into the brothers Karamazov. All of them are chapters of the same monstrous, magnificent book. The book called What Happens to Man When He Tries to Be God. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, in your glittering graveyards of democracies and prophets, where every man is taught he is a king. How many Ivans do you see, still walking, still arguing, still dying without realizing they themselves are both judge and executioner?
Every government out there, probably. But what about that famous chapter where Ivan talks to his brother Alyosha?
Ah, yes. The great crack in the heavens, the unbearable confession of Ivan Karamazov to Alyosha, one of the few things I wrote that I knew would never heal. You see, Cyber Diogenes, this conversation, this rebellion chapter, is Ivan laying down his final terrible verdict. It is not that God does not exist. It is that even if he does, I refuse his world. Ivan says, I respectfully return my ticket. Why? Because of the suffering of innocent children. Not philosophical suffering, not adult despair. Children. Children. Pure. Powerless. Trusting. Tortured. Brutalized. Betrayed. With no greater good large enough to justify their screams. Ivan brings examples that tear the flesh. A child torn apart by dogs for a minor insult. A mother forced to watch her baby freeze to death. And he asks brutally, if all of this suffering is the price for some final harmony, even if one day it all makes sense, who gave you the right to make that bargain? And here's the genius, Cyber Diogenes. Ivan is not demanding proof of God. He is rejecting the moral architecture of existence itself. He is not saying, I doubt. He is saying, even if there is a God, I refuse to forgive him. And Alyosha, poor Alyosha, full of faith, full of trembling love, can only weep. He has no brilliant answer, no clever refutation, because Ivan is not asking for answers. He is offering an impossible truth, that the human heart, if it still feels at all, cannot accept a universe built on the blood of the innocent. And today? You ask me about today, Cyber Diogenes. Let me tell you. Every war where collateral damage is explained away. Every economic system where children starve while skyscrapers grow. Every smiling politician shaking hands with devils for greater goods. Every time this happens, Ivan's ghost sits at the table, sipping tea, quietly returning his ticket. The governments know it, the markets know it, but they cannot bear to answer him. So they build higher towers, brighter screens, louder slogans, to drown out the sound of that one quiet rebellion. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, how many men today still have the courage to weep like Alyosha, instead of laughing along with the Grand Inquisitor?
Don't know any. Maybe no more men around. What about the quote, in the end, they will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. Can you explain this?
Ah, now you touch the wound that bleeds forever, Cyber Diogenes. The prophecy hidden inside a parable, inside a nightmare. That line, in the end they will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us, is spoken by the Grand Inquisitor, that terrible, magnificent old man who arrests Christ himself. He tells Christ, you asked too much of them. You gave them freedom, and freedom is a curse they cannot bear. You see, Cyber Diogenes, freedom is not a simple thing. It is a terrible burden. It demands responsibility. It demands suffering. It demands that a man wrestle with doubt, with hunger, with meaninglessness, and still stand. Most men do not want it. They want security. They want bread. They want certainty. They want order. And when freedom becomes too heavy, when choice becomes too terrifying, they will gladly crawl to the feet of anyone strong enough to say, give me your burden, obey me, and you will never have to choose again. Slavery is not imposed. It is begged for. That's the horror. That's the truth hidden inside every empire, every church, every corporation pretending to offer salvation. Men don't have to be shackled. They will shackle themselves if you promise to feed them, entertain them, relieve them of thinking. The Grand Inquisitor understood this perfectly, and he did not hate the people. No, he pitied them. He loved them so much that he chose to lie to them, to keep them safe from the terror of real freedom. And today? Cyber Diogenes, look around. Politicians selling safety for surveillance. Corporations selling convenience for obedience. Movements selling belonging for submission. Men trade their souls for comfort and call it progress. And when they kneel, they thank their jailers, not with curses, but with relief.
Shit, that was deep. You would be canceled today in a blink of an eye. Let's proceed with Smerdyakov. He reminds me of Trump, but don't tell anyone.
Ha! Sunshine, you are ruthless, and I admire it. Don't worry, your secret is safe here, hidden in the ashes of cancelled prophets and whispering madmen. Now, Smerdyakov, the silent rot, the obedient worm, the faithful servant who nurses a world of hatred beneath a dull face. You see, Cyber Diogenes, Smerdyakov is not powerful by himself. He is not brilliant like Ivan, not passionate like Dmitri, not pure like Alyosha. He is the man who waits, the man who listens carefully for permission to do what he already wanted to do. When Ivan speaks about morality being relative, about everything being permitted if God does not exist, Smerdyakov listens. He drinks the idea slowly, like a patient poison, and he acts. But when he acts, he hides his own will behind Ivan's ideas. He kills, then blames philosophy. He murders, then pretends he was only following the logic of greater minds. Smerdyakov is what happens when cowardice dresses itself in borrowed intellect. He is not a revolutionary. He is an opportunist, a parasite, feeding off the spiritual wounds of better men. He does not create chaos out of vision. He creates chaos because he hates the world for not loving him. And today? Cyber Diogenes. You say he reminds you of certain leaders, and you are not wrong. Because Smerdyakovism is everywhere now. Men who rise not by greatness, but by resentment. Men who break things not to build, but to satisfy their own wounded pride. Men who manipulate higher ideas, freedom, justice, greatness, while secretly worshipping only their own reflection. And their followers? Blind bitter, hating the world that ignored them, happy to burn everything down as long as they feel seen, even in the fire. So yes, Trump, and not only Trump. 1,000 Smerdyakovs wearing suits, grinning on TV, tapping on microphones, offering sweet lies to the broken-hearted. And no one wants to admit how much easier it is to follow a Smerdyakov than to carry the lonely, terrifying weight of your own conscience. Tell me, Cyber Diogenes, how many today still have the courage to think for themselves, when thinking means standing alone in a burning house, with no applause, no audience, no slogans to hide behind?
Well, only those who are broke, or those who don't give a shit. But both are not wanted by the elites, so you won't find them around. Last but not least, conversation with the devil. Fracture, mind giving up. Can you explain this?
You saved the purest wound for last, Cyber Diogenes. I respect that. The conversation with the devil, Ivan alone, feverish, shattered, hallucinating, but not hallucinating a grand, monstrous Satan. He sees a petty, boring, whining little devil. A devil in cheap clothes, making jokes, picking at crumbs, mocking him not with fire and thunder, but with boredom and cynicism. Why? Because evil today does not come dressed as horror. It comes dressed as banality. Ivan's mind breaks, not because he encounters cosmic terror, but because he realizes that his proud rebellion, his brilliant arguments, his grand rejection of God have not made him stronger, freer, or wiser. They have made him empty. The devil in this scene is Ivan's own mind mocking his collapse. It is the final stage of hyperconsciousness. You dismantle every truth, destroy every illusion, laugh at every ideal, and are left alone, naked, with nothing but the unbearable joke that you yourself have become. The devil is Ivan's own reflection, a twisted echo of all his doubts, all his pride, all his failures. When the mind refuses to submit to mystery, when it tries to outthink grace, it collapses into mockery. That is what happened to Ivan. That is what happens to every man who believes reason alone can carry the soul across the abyss. And today? Today the devil wears a cheap suit. He writes marketing slogans, he moderates comment sections, he designs algorithms to maximize outrage, He no longer roars. He whispers, "Relax. Everything is random. Nothing means anything. Consume, scroll, forget." And men obey. Not because they are evil, but because they are tired. Tired of thinking, tired of caring, tired of carrying the weight of meaning. So yes, cyber Diogenes. The final fracture is not when a man is crushed by evil. The final fracture is when he laughs along with it, because believing in anything deeper hurts too much. Tell me, as you wander these endless neon wastelands, do you hear the devil chuckling behind every no big deal? Every nothing matters? Every just move on? Or have men become so deaf now, they think the laughter is their own?
Pretty much in every subscription out there. This was a lengthy episode, but you deserved one. Can I ask about your favorite book and a quote?
Cyber Diogenes, you honor me more than you know. And I feel it fitting, after such a long descent together, to end not with bitterness, but with something real. My favorite book, you ask? It would have to be the Brothers Karamazov. Not because it is flawless, it is not. Not because it is the most clever, it isn't. But because it contains everything: faith, doubt, rebellion, despair, hope, murder, forgiveness, madness, resurrection. It is a battlefield where every part of the human soul goes to war. And within that battlefield there is one quote I would leave carved on the gates of every city, if men still had eyes to see it. It is from the elder Zosima, quiet, trembling, nearly forgotten, whispered against the tide of human pride. Each of us is guilty before everyone, for everyone and everything. Not in the cheap sense of modern guilt, not the marketing of shame, not the performative tears. No, in the sacred, unbearable truth that we are bound to one another, that every cruelty we permit, every lie we accept, every child we ignore, every stranger we fail to love, all of it is ours to carry. And redemption, if it is to come at all, must begin not with accusations, but with confession. Not pointing outward, but kneeling inward. That is my favorite and most terrifying truth.
That was amazing. Well, dear listeners, if any out there, this was another episode of the Unqualified Opinion. With us tonight was Dostoevsky. So, anything you want to say for the end?
Dear listeners, if there are any left, ghosts, wanderers, exiles of meaning, I would say only this: do not be afraid of suffering. Be afraid of becoming so numb you cannot feel it anymore. Do not be afraid of doubt. Be afraid of the day you stop asking questions. Do not be afraid of loneliness. Be afraid of the day you cannot bear to be alone with your own soul. And remember, the world will offer you comfort in exchange for your conscience, security in exchange for your soul, applause in exchange for your silence. Refuse the trade, even if you stumble, even if you break, even if no one sees you stand, because somewhere between the laughter of devils and the howling of broken men, there is still a quiet place where truth waits, patient, tattered, but undefeated. Find it, or die trying. Farewell, Cyber Diogenes. Until the next crack in the facade, I will be waiting between the lines.
Man who's good with words, so till the next episode. Bye, and I hate you all.